Wednesday,
Planning board.
planning board, I'm thinking the wrong board, planning board meeting, for May 15th. Just a reminder, this is a public meeting being video and audio recorded for cable broadcasts and also for showing on YouTube. If everyone minds standing for the pledge of allegiance to the flag, and after that, if you would remain standing, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'd just like to take a moment of silence to remember Ryan Hazel, who was killed this past weekend in a tragic event in the town of Dayton. Ryan was a Rehoboth resident, but his father did work for the town of Dayton in our highway department. So if I could have a moment of silence, please. Okay, thank you, everyone. Well, public hearings aren't scheduled till 6:15, so we're gonna move on to well, I think we're gonna talk about, well, we can go to the next meeting date. Confirm next meeting date of June 19. That is the third Wednesday of the month, correct?
Yes.
And we'll be on our summer schedule at that time. So our next regularly scheduled meeting will be Wednesday, June 19th, the regular time, 6 p.m. in this room here. I think we'll move down to, everything's continued, so I would like to move down to the rezoning of Winthrop Street, Route 44. Just this past week, town administrator asked to speak with a representative of the zoning board, planning board, and building commissioner. And we talked about possibilities of attracting more business to the town of Dayton. The only potential areas we saw at the time was Route 138 and 44. The 44 district presently is zoned commercial business, if you will, with a mixed-use overlay. That particular zoning, I'm not sure how long ago it was done, prior to, I think, any of us here perhaps, except maybe for Bob, only reaches out for a distance of 100 feet to each side of the road. So our thoughts, and I just throwing it out there for consideration, and any comments if you have any, our thoughts were to expand the business district and the mixed-use overlay out to a distance of 300 feet on each side of the road, which is consistent with all our other overlays and districts within the town. It's generally about 300 feet each side. And after doing that, we talked about a marijuana overlay district. This goes from town line to town line. So, I don't know if you have any comments at this time, or if you just wanna think about it, or any opinions about going forward with something like this. I told her I would make a presentation this evening, and I don't know what your thoughts are, if any, or we can discuss it another time. I feel expanding this area will give us a better opportunity to attract business in town. 100-foot distance from the center of the roadway is not a whole lot of room for a business, so. Any thoughts, comments?
Yeah, why are we doing just 300 feet?
Why? Because right now it's only 100.
Okay, so why not go more?
More than 100?
Sure.
That's what I'm saying, to expand.
More
it.
than 300.
Well, I guess we could go to 500 if we wanted. But, you know, it's just a consideration.
It's a start, anyway, I think 300 is a good start, and see what lies beyond, and
Isn't that what you said, that you wanted to go to 300? And I'm saying, why not go further?
Why?
500.
Well, we could, I don't know, you
A
know.
small business is okay for 300, but if a bigger business wants to come in, then we gotta go through this process all over again. Well, why not go?
500 feet's a consideration.
What's the average lot depth off the street?
The average,
There is no
probably-
such thing.
No, of what those lots are presently.
up there, some of those are pretty big, but the standard lot's usually 250 back. We chose 300, or I did, I guess, because of the fact it's consistent with what we're having now. If we think we wanna go 500, that's something to consider.
I'm gonna fight on
I'm saying 500.
Okay.
If you wanna go to less,
That's fine.
300, I don't care. I'm just one person.
I'd like to take it under advisement and
Yeah, think
look
about
over
it.
the maps and see who it's gonna affect and, you know, see if it conforms with what other cities and towns are doing. You know, just to look at it,
Right.
and we don't wanna make any snap decisions on something that we're gonna be stuck with for a long time.
Good idea.
Now, that measurement, sir, of 100 feet.
Right now, it's 100,
From
yeah.
the center of the
Center of the
highway,
road, yeah.
okay, to the front door of the business or the rear door?
Now, the business district only extends 100 feet back.
Right.
So
So-
basically,
You're telling me the poor Tommy that owns the package store is in violation?
No, I think he's probably within 100 feet in the business district.
say what?
Well, the mobile station's behind, further back than him.
That's residential.
Yeah, that liquor store's been there a long time, so way before zoning bylaws.
Right, but the mobile station, 2 doors down.
He might have had to have gone for a variance at the time, because if that's the way that's zoned, they would not be meeting that, because the center of the road, that road is probably 50, 60 feet wide. So you take center, 30 feet belongs to the road, so you're taking 70 feet beyond that. The pumps are actually in the residential loan.
You think?
I mean, the residential zone. I mean, you're looking at
Yeah, it's been zoned that way
probably
for some
400 or
time.
500 feet there overall.
When I bought my property, I was under the assumption that it was 300 already. And forgive me for not knowing that,
Well, if our zoning map is accurate, which is what I went by
okay?
when we did this, but we're gonna verify all of this and when we make a determination where we're going with it.
I think, speaking for myself and most of my neighbors, we would be comfortable with the 300, but not more than that.
Yeah.
Because now you're opening, you know, you can go 500, 600 feet. You're opening a big store.
Yeah, we wanna,
I mean, I understand you guys want business in town, and I get that, but, you know,
I don't
I
think
bought
it's-
18 acres to be alone. You know,
okay.
and if the guy next to me decides, he's gonna be right at my doorstep.
Yeah, is there anybody else wants to comment on the distances or?
So you're saying that's the total depth of that lot for that business?
Well, the
or is that
district.
The storefront?
The lot could be
building?
bigger than the district. If
It's
the
the
lot ex-
overall depth of the lot that's zoned business. That's what that means. So basically, 50 feet the minimum to the front of the building from the center of the road. That's usually how it goes. But most of the time, it's 100 feet from the center of the road to the front of the building. So if you put a 100-foot building there, now you are at 200 feet,
Correct.
okay? So leaves you 100 feet behind the building for fire trucks and all of that. It's not a lot of space.
No.
300 feet is not a lot of space. So,
It's just something that we're gonna be presenting probably in the future, and there'll be public hearings on it. And at which time, you know, the affected, the concerned neighbors will have an opportunity to provide input. You know, we also talked about the marijuana overlay district on it. We have the one now on William Street, and we're looking possibly to do this one from the Taunton line to the Rehoboth line. So, it's something forthcoming, and, I'm sure we'll be discussing it then, when we do so. And Woody had, suggested we table this, or we think about it to the future. We can do that, so it's getting almost time for our first public hearing, so we can move on to, you have a vacation carryover request?
I do. So I am just respectfully requesting to carry over 2 weeks of vacation. I do intend to try to use some of that time, we just haven't had a chance to schedule anything, but just in the off chance. And since our next meeting is so late, I won't meet the deadline for that, so I'm just requesting to carry over 2 weeks vacation. I do have 3 weeks left, and I'm taking that week of Memorial Day,
Okay.
that week off, so I am definitely using some of that.
Is there a motion to approve the request?
I'll make a motion to approve the request of the administrative assistant, office manager for a vacation carryover.
Second.
Okay, motion is made and seconded to approve the request of 2-week carryover. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
If you would like, I can just read into record our Bristol County Aggie. They're doing a motion to, they need
Yeah,
to
sure.
continue. So Bristol Aggie, had to do some revisions to their site plans per Peter Williams' comments, and then they were gonna be submitting their response to Mr. Williams. Didn't have sufficient amount of time to review the significant amount of changes, so they're just asking for a motion to continue their matter until their next scheduled meeting on June 19th.
Is there a motion to continue the hearing of Bristol County Agricultural High School site plan review?
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded to continue site plan review for Bristol County Agricultural High School. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all's in favor?
Aye.
All's opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. That's it, no, thank you. There's one piece of correspondence, would you just read that, and then we'll open our first public hearing. Yeah, would you?
Acceptance of Mockingbird Lane as public way. Recorded document, final steps on file number 791-40C. Dear Ed, with respect to the above matter, I want to acknowledge that we have received the registry recordings of the deeds necessary from all respective lots in the subdivision to transfer the title to the town of Dayton. We did notice, however, that there is no deed for the owner or the drainage parcel, which also has frontage on the public way. The drainage parcel was conveyed in 2018 by St. Mark's LLC, Elm Street Estates Homeowners Trust. Deed recorded in book 24-743, page 36. There were issues on the transfer that Felix Credo reported to me by email dated January 29th, that I have attached correspondence to this email. Could you advise as to the status of resolving the last parcel, so that we may then record the necessary plans to complete the acceptance of Mockingbird Lane as a public way? Thank you for your attention to this matter. Respectfully, Gay and Gay.
Thank you. Okay. It is 6:15. You wanna read it?
Town of Dayton, notice of public hearing, in accordance with the provisions of Chapter 40A, Section 5 of the Mass General Laws, the Dayton Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, May 15th, 2019, at 6:15 PM at the Dayton Town Hall, lower level conference room, 979 Somerset Avenue, Dayton, Mass. To review and receive public comments concerning the proposed amendments to the Dayton zoning bylaws adopted October 15th, 2018. The proposed amendments are identified below in terms of subject matter. The item designations given have been assigned by the planning board for identification purposes only. Article numbers will be subsequently be established by the selectmen for the warrant. Item 1, Kennel, commercial zoning bylaw. To see if the town will vote to amend the Town of Dayton zoning bylaws, section 6 definitions kennel, commercial, by deleting it in its entirety and replace it with a new definition, and to add a new definition to be known as kennel, residential, or take any action thereon. Item number 2, ground-mounted solar photovoltaic installation zoning bylaw. To see if the town will vote to delete in its entirety section 4650, design standards, and replace with a new section 4650, design standards, or take any action thereon. Item number 3, retreat lots zoning bylaw. To see if the town will vote to amend in its entirety section 5090, retreat lots, by correcting the subsection reference numbers, or take any action thereon. Item number 4, site plan review zoning bylaw. To see if the town will vote to delete in its entirety section 5460, minor site plan, and replace with a new section 5460, or take any action thereon. A copy of the complete proposed text is available at mass.gov/planning board/planning board/index.php, or at the office of the town clerk or the planning board at 979 Somerset Avenue, Dayton, Mass. during regular business hours. Any person interested or wishing to be heard should appear at the time and place designated for public hearing. Dayton Planning Board, Thomas Pires Chairman, Timothy Ryan's Vice Chairman, Robert Bona Clerk, Robert Woods Member, and Joseph Figurito Member.
Thank you. We'll open our first item, which is the kennel zoning bylaw change. And just so everyone knows, this proposed change has been active and was presented in the month of March this year. It is not a reaction to anything that's happened recently. It was first presented to the Board of Health on March 13th, 2019 of this year, and it's finally come to the planning board since it's a zoning bylaw change approved for town meeting. So, just want to let everybody know that. Let me explain what I don't know if everybody grabbed what we have up here, what this presently does. Our present kennel bylaw does not address what we feel is adequate for the town. It does not, well, I'll tell you what this one does, it'll be easier that way, which the old one doesn't. The new bylaw identifies the 5 types of kennels allowed under Massachusetts general law. It also identifies the district each kennel will be allowed in. It also identifies the number of dogs allowed for personal use or enjoyment. The new residential kennel will limit the number of dogs and size of property. Right now, the state says more than 4 for personal. It does not limit the number of dogs. This bylaw will limit it to 5 dogs. Commercial kennels will only be allowed in the business district, and all residential kennels will now be have to have a public hearing and a special permit before any are allowed. Special permit granting authority will be the Board of Health, and I think before it was questionable whether kennels were allowed in the business district, residential district. There was no limiting of dogs. This actually is stricter than Mass General Law in one case, where the present definition of a personal kennel, and I'm gonna read it to you here in a second as soon as I find it. find it?
Just went through it.
No, in the, no, that's not it. Personal kennel. Mass General Law states, a pack or collection of more than 4 dogs, 3 months or older, owned or kept under single ownership or for personal use. Our new one now will limit that to 5 dogs total. Instead of, there are some houses that have 7 dogs, 8 dogs, 6 dogs. So, that's our proposal. Any questions on that?
Yes, I have a question.
Yes.
What is a residential kennel supposed to be doing? Is it their own dogs? Are they
It would be their
keeping
own
other
dogs. It would be their own dogs, yeah.
So that's only their own dogs? They wouldn't be taking in other dogs and like caring for them?
Then you have a daycare type thing you're talking about,
Right.
right? Yeah, that would be a business, so it would be in a
Okay,
business.
so that would not be allowed in a residential area?
No.
But according to what you're suggesting, someone could own up to 5 dogs, no more than 5 dogs?
Yeah, on 1 acre of property.
Okay,
You would need 1 acre of property.
and,
Our animal control officer wants to state something.
okay,
Just so people are aware, I am not gonna ask anybody that has 6 dogs or 7 dogs at this point, if they get a kennel after we do its special permit and everything, to get rid of their dogs. They would have to, when their dogs start passing away, they can't have more than 5 on their property. Because I see people already shaking their head. If people have dogs, they love their dogs, I can't ask anybody to just get rid of 2 dogs.
We, in relation to that, I had a conversation with town administrator on those that may be grandfathered in that have more than 5. And we both agreed that we would enforce a kennel that is adequate to maintain the dogs with concrete pad and 6 or 8 foot fence, and not just a little fence it's gonna be a kennel to state standards, so,
For residential?
if they have more than 5.
and what about keeping dogs out at nighttime?
Well, there's a
One of the
nuisance bylaw
One of the
that,
reasons we are here is because of that. We've called and we've complained many times about one of our neighbors who had their dogs out continually. He had
yeah, that's a
10 he had
nuisance
10
bylaw that
dogs.
would be handled by the Board of Health.
Okay, well, it
Is that who
wasn't
you're calling?
It wasn't addressed very well.
When did you call?
I
About
called-
a year ago.
I called a year ago.
Um,
The neighbor across the street, Mr. Deeb, his name has come up before. I think I even spoke with you about having the dogs howling at 3, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning. He had, initially, he had 5 dogs, then he went up to 10.
I think he has 7 right now,
7 or 8, I think I counted 8 this morning.
yeah.
There's a puppy under 6 months old that
And,
that wouldn't be counted.
Anyway, the end of that story is, these dogs act like a pack of wolves. They go in a circle, and they howl at the moon, or coyotes, or foxes, or whatever, and really wakes her up at 3 o'clock in the morning.
I'm aware.
And so.
Now, you live on Fieldstone?
Yes,
Fieldstone,
we're
on
right
the-
across the street.
Right across the
And
street.
the dogs have come out after you when you've
I
been
have
walking.
I've been attacked by, one of the dogs.
When was that?
I would say about 2 months ago, and unfortunately for me, Mr. Levine, who I believe
I
might
think
have.
he's over here.
Levine?
Mr.
Right
Levine?
behind
Yes,
Right there, okay.
fortunately, he was driving a vehicle down the street, and his vehicle got between me and the dog, because the dog was coming
Okay.
after me. So,
Um,
and then tomorrow, I'm gonna be with the Board of Health tomorrow for the dog down the street with
It's
the
another issue.
it's another gigantic Doberman who was attacked me
But that's
twice.
not
But that's
dealing
not
with
about
this.
this issue.
Um,
But we gotta get these dog
What,
issues
what
under
regulations will there be to, again, not have dogs be out in a
Well, we need
yard
enforcement,
24
and we
hours
need
a
a lot
day?
of people to enforce this.
Right now, we have a leash law that we just passed last year.
I know that,
And
I
it
was,
is the
I was
law
glad
that your
to
dog
see
belongs
that,
on a
but
leash.
that's not being, again,
I
not being
understand, and
enforced because
I'm
there's.
sorry.
Well, let's focus on this, and,
Yeah,
two of us here are with the Board of Health. I'm chair of the Board of
Right.
Health, and our Animal Control's office is here. And I'm gonna suggest you come talk to us on next Wednesday night. And we'll try to get Mr. Deep squared away with his animals and force him to bring them in the house at night.
now I'll have to say, I don't know whether he's had them, you hear it in the summertime because the windows
Yeah.
are open. I don't hear it unless sometimes when I go out in the morning, but that's probably at like 6 o'clock, I might hear them barking at that time.
Yeah.
But I couldn't tell you for sure whether they've been left out. All I know is his garage door is open.
Yeah, and I'm
I
not
don't-
crazy about the enclosure he has either.
Oh, yeah, well, first of all,
So-
the wind just knocked that over, so, and it's not gonna keep the dogs from going
Yeah, the
through.
construction fence won't
Yeah, no,
keep them in. Once this is either approved or disapproved at town meeting, I think we can start enforcing some of these things. If we're gonna grandfather dogs, then we need to make sure that they're properly pinned. And that's a Board of Health matter, so, we're just trying to get this bylaw in place now, so we can have some type of, procedure or rules and regulations that we can enforce. When we met with Mr. D back in November or December, I think the Board of Health at the time only said he could have 4.
right,
And subsequently, that got changed because of the wording of our bylaw. And he was grandfathered for 6 and a puppy at the time, I think. So, but if they're still making noise at night as a Board of Health matter, we can deal with that. So,
Why wouldn't I like the idea of making sure that the dogs are truly confined and especially if it's more than 5, why wouldn't we ask for proper confinement if there's even up to 5? As part of this change.
Isn't
Well,
that already governed
this is
under
why-
Mass laws?
I think this is why, it's not why, I know it's why, we're asking for a hearing and a special permit.
Right.
We wanna know what kind of dogs there are.
Okay.
If they're a known aggressive dogs, maybe we'll require that. If there's 5 little dogs, not that little dogs don't bite, because I've been bitten by little dogs more than big dogs.
It's a smaller bite.
Yeah, that's right. It's a different situation. I think the special permit will give us a handle on how to deal with each situation separately.
And does town or state law already give you the jurisdiction and authority to demand?
Mass General Law gives us,
Confinement?
Mass General Law gives us authority to fine them, yes.
But how about to say that they need to be kept behind proper fencing, for example?
I'm sorry,
How about keeping them behind proper fencing? for example?
well, this is what we're gonna need to do, yeah. I mean, we can't, unfortunately, you and I know this.
The leash law is the leash law.
It's not the dog, it's the owner. And the owner does not, we can only hope to catch him. Our enforcement now, she works 24/7 on call. It's the only person we have, so, right now, maybe town meeting, we'll be looking, not this one, but in the future, we need more enforcement, so we need more hours out there.
The concern I have is that we wait to catch somebody whose electric fence has gone off, has been shut off, or they forgot to change the batteries. Next thing I know, my 4-year-old kid has been mauled by a dog.
I hear you.
I think it's a little silliness to wait for when we probably could ask for stricter guidelines when you have a pack of dogs on your property to keep them away from the public.
Has he, well, I think we're going off track here,
Oh, I
and
think
and
it's
I
related
wanna
to-
answer
it's
your
related to
questions.
kennel laws, it's related to this number of
I
dogs on
know,
the property.
well, this is true. Are there any other incidents since you came to us and this gentleman in front came to us? We need some history of were the dogs off the property, were they intimidating you, did they chase you? This is the kind of stuff we need before we can really enforce.
They intimidate everybody who tries to walk up that
Any-
street and pass that property.
Anybody who walks up by the street is immediately confronted by
But
all of
they're
the
not off
dogs.
the property, are
They're
they?
not off the property, just that one occasion, that it broke through the fence.
Yeah, I mean, again,
You
I
know,
love
granted,
dogs,
I
we've
agree
always
it's an
had dogs,
intimidating
but
matter. But if they're not coming off the property, these people have rights too. So, and I understand your concern and your concern. Stacy?
Oh, I just wanna say, if you're having problems and you're feeling intimidated, you don't always get me, call the police department, it's on record, it's recorded. So we have a record, so when we sit with them, we go, we have 10 times that the dogs have been off the property intimidating somebody, we've gotta do something about it. I can't just go, oh, you know, somebody called me today about the other situation, and I've had problems for 3 years with those dogs, but you never called.
Yeah,
So
well,
I can't do anything if you don't call.
well, I will say, my husband called, this was a while ago, when he had the 10 dogs, called several times.
And I did go to the
that was
property.
the same, I believe that was the same incident you mentioned, back in December or
Yes.
November. That you drove your car in between them.
Well, we had actually called even before that, cause we actually were concerned that nobody was taking care of the dogs, cause we never saw
Right.
Mr. Deeb. We never saw a car in the driveway, the garage door was open, and the dogs were always out. And we actually, that was our first call one time,
Police
was
went
to
out
make
there to
sure that they
well
were
care.
being,
We did go to the property,
Right.
myself and the police
Right.
department did go, we did find him at the house. So we did go out when we were called, but I need history, I need calls.
2 years ago, June, I was attacked by 2 of his dogs. My point being is, I'm encouraging us to be more proactive.
Oh,
When we
absolutely.
have packs of dogs, to keep them behind real fences, to keep the public safe. And
Mhm.
again, recent news should teach us a lesson, that packs of dogs can be dangerous.
My question is, why do we need history in
Because-
order to protect people from these
Because-
animals? I mean,
because just
if
like-
you're gonna have that many dogs, you should have the proper fencing, and that to me
I'm not
is the
saying you
right way to
shouldn't.
do it.
I'm not saying you shouldn't, but noise control, that kind of stuff, I need stuff in, so I have a history. Because I just can't go knock on somebody's door and say, oh, by the way, this, you know, and not have any kind of history backing it up.
I understand, but
So-
that history, we don't want that history to be, my kid just got killed or
Well,
bitten.
proper fencing, by mass state law, proper fencing is the underground fencing that he has. Whether you,
I don't-
whether you
Which is
agree
a
with
joke.
that or not,
trust
Which is a
an
joke.
electric
or whether you
fence.
agree with that or not,
I know,
that's
I know.
mass general, that's in the mass
Not real.
law.
We've seen the dogs go through the electric fence, so.
And I understand that, but that is an approved fencing through Massachusetts state law.
Right, and I'm
so-
asking the town of Dayton to take another step to be more proactive, especially in light of recent news. We don't want this kind of crap happening again in this town. If you choose to have that many dogs on your property, you should be following different rules. Case closed.
I
To protect the public.
That will happen.
I agree, but the other situation was a different situation too. Because the child was
Right.
allowed on that
Sure.
property.
Right.
Idea's pack of dogs.
I know, but
Pack
I'm just
behavior.
saying, two different
I'm not
situations.
disagreeing, but recent news has heightened this awareness.
I
Let's
understand.
be more proactive in protecting the public, especially our children. I pay taxes too.
I
He's got
would,
right
I would
now,
suggest,
beside him, he has got another family that has, I would say, I just met the 3-year-old the other day, and there's I think a 5-year-old, so
is
they.
that Adobe down the end of the street?
No, this is,
No,
no.
he's talking about that there are children living right next door to Mr. D,
Oh, yeah.
so,
Two
young
little
children.
kids.
Is it reasonable to ask the planning board to reconsider the bylaw change, to consider appropriate fencing and appropriate safety? I think this is,
We could add it right now.
just half the scenario, that I think it's, part of your charter is to protect the safety and welfare of the residents. Numbers of dogs, I don't think that really matters, but I think, like these folks with the safety issues, ensuring that as a community, we feel well protected regardless whether we're against or above the requirements of the state of Massachusetts.
So we can add some wording, somewhere in here that, do we wanna use numbers of dogs, or are we gonna use, Stacy?
We also have to be careful with that, because I have people in town that have 5 chihuahuas that live in a house, or 6 chihuahuas that live in a house, and you're gonna tell them they need to, I understand, I'm not belittling what's being said here. It's just that you've gotta understand, most of the people in the house, in this town that have 5 or 6 dogs are little dogs that live in the house. They're not even big dogs or anything like that.
Well,
Not that they can't run in packs, because they can, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, 10-foot fence and something on slabs for everybody that has a kennel license is not doable, because you've got dogs that live in the house that don't go outside except for on a leash, and even don't go outside if it's raining.
Then that's the difference. If your dog, my dog, the only time my dog was outside was when I was home. And I didn't leave the dog out all the time. We had a bigger dog, but, if you've got little dogs that are living in your house, then
I'm just saying we
that's
have
a
to make
different
up,
situation.
make a delineation where it's gonna be. If it's over 40 pounds and they have X amount of dogs, then we need to know that. We need to sit down and talk about that, because
Yeah, let
I'm
me
sorry, the
say this.
Chihuahuas,
Our annual town meeting is about in 3 weeks. If this passes, one of the things we're probably gonna enforce for those dogs grandfathered in is a proper kennel. That was one of the things I mentioned just a moment ago. So, you know, we have to research further what are the laws, if you will, that we have to abide with also, so.
I think the animal control officer, is it Stacy?
yes,
We met before when the bull was running
yes,
loose in my
yes,
yard.
yes.
My neighbor had a bull run loose in my yard, so, I still have a picture of it. Anyway, the,
Sorry, go
I'm
ahead,
sorry,
finish. No.
I was gonna say, I can see if there is going to be, fencing, adequate fencing. It could be, and the electric fence is not adequate fencing. And just because the state says it might be okay to use an electric fence, that doesn't necessarily mean that the town of Dayton can't make it more strict.
Correct.
And say, no, we're gonna have a wall. We'll build a big wall. So,
You wanna use that language in this room?
All right.
I think a chain link fence is probably the safest way out, because it is, wood rots and people don't pay attention to
Yeah,
it.
at least,
Vinyl breaks and chain link fence does
the
not.
fence that he had up there, that it's there now, I don't know if you have seen it, it's like an orange.
I did, it's a construction fence.
That was all
I
knocked
was
down.
just up there the other day.
That was all knocked down
By
this
the
past
wind.
winter by the wind. The whole thing was flat on the ground.
So, Tom, can I just, punch in just a little bit? I think first and foremost, we need to recognize that the article, the way it's written, and what we wanna do for town meeting is to define the definitions of those 2 bylaws. So to put in what you're requesting, fencing and that type of stuff, it's not appropriate in the definition part. And by doing that, you change the article in itself, which now jeopardizes approval from Attorney General. That being said, under the definitions for these able uses, it says it's gonna be required to have a special permit. Special permits require a public hearing, and at that public hearing, that's when the public gets their input and their concerns, or allowed whether they agree or disagree. And then that's when the Board of Health steps in and says, okay, you're gonna have a residential kennel license for 4 dogs. This one has Chihuahuas, so we're not gonna require a stockade fence, but this one's gonna have German Shepherds. So I think in order to get the particular place in for each kennel license that's issued would be done under the direction of the special permit under the public hearing.
we
So I
can,
think to amend this
Yeah.
part is out of the scope.
we can set conditions at the public hearing
Correct.
that they must do and follow.
Do you have the authority to do that?
Yes,
There's no
Yes.
loopholes there?
no,
Because back in November, you said 4 dogs. He's now sitting with 7 plus a puppy.
well, I was overruled.
But, right, based on what? I guess that's my point, if it's not
I
enshrined
think based on
anywhere.
the language in our present bylaw
Right.
isn't strong enough. If we were challenged about the number of dogs somebody can have, you know, I agree with 1,000%. But I think Kerry said it well, better than I could.
Again, not adding into these bylaws, I'm more concerned about, you get the special permit thing,
Get to
you
the
say put
special
fencing
permit.
up, they fight back because you have nothing in the bylaws anywhere to
Well,
say that you can
Well,
actually.
here's
It would be
here's
a
the caveat to
condition.
this, is that the town of Dayton, we can go past this bylaw at town meeting,
Sure,
and then this board can add to this bylaw any addendums to say that proper fencing, so on and so forth, must be added, or whatever it may be.
We can add regulations also as we go
Right.
along. The regulations do not require town meeting vote, they are set by the Board of Health. So we can do regulations, or we can set conditions at the time of the special permit.
Is that something that most of you are in agreement about?
Well, I think the Board of Health is, I can't speak for the planning board, as a planning board member, yes, I think, you know,
I would say
I'm
yes.
wearing two hats here,
Absolutely, yes.
okay?
Oh, very
Any others?
quiet.
Wow.
Okay. We did vote to send this town meeting before, seeing there's no changes.
Do we need to read this bylaw in its entirety to accept it?
That's,
Well, you
that's the only bylaw that you're doing, so again, what our bylaw change that we're proposing for tonight is just the definition of kennel commercial and kennel residential.
Oh, there is one amendment I wanted to make to this, I'm
And,
sorry.
okay, and then we also are, under our use regulation, it's gonna be updated to reflect, we have a little cheat sheet,
Okay.
for lack of a better term, where it says where you can and can't have kennels, whether it's commercial or residential. So that's what the amendment that we have on the floor right now to bring to town meeting.
Yeah, the amendment I'd like to make, is under kennel residential, where it says a pack or collection of not more than 5 dogs owned or kept under single ownership for personal use and enjoyment may be allowed on no less than 1 acre of land in the residential or business district by a special permit. After that, I would enter granted by the Board of Health.
So comma granted by the Board of Health.
Special permit, yep. Now, as a board, I think we should vote if we all agree with that amendment to send it to town meeting as amended.
Mr. Chairman, I'm gonna make a motion that we include in the definition of kennel residential after special permit granted by the Board of Health.
Is there a second?
Second?
Okay. Motion is made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you. Next item. Ground-mounted solar photovoltaic installations, zoning bylaw. We have some wording changes on the solar. Woody, you wanna take it? That's your favorite topic. No? I gotta find it.
There might be on the last, I think.
I'd like to note, I believe there's a page missing from the handout,
Second page.
the second
Keep
page.
it, excuse me, keep it by, it's double-sided.
No. Copy I got. I mean, I have your posting.
Dimensional density.
Are you,
I'm looking for 4654, so subsections A, B, C, D are missing.
I think it actually continues.
4654,
Yeah, it does continue.
This copy goes from 4654, missing all the subsections, and it picks up at waivers into 4657. So it's missing 4655, 4656, as well as subsections A, B, C, D in 4654.
oh, you're right, so if you forgive me, I can take a step out. Sorry about that. And I will go make, so it's one page, I'm just gonna go make a photocopy, sorry about that, and I'll be right back.
Could you make a couple, please?
See? Good, you? Good to see you. Fixed out anything over there?
Not yet.
They'll be coming.
Yeah, I know. I'll be ready for them.
I thought the only thing we changed was screening.
Yeah, I think that was it, though. Everything else is pretty much the same. Screening and,
Why are we deleting it in its entirety?
because I think the numbers were incorrect.
Oh, yeah.
Is it what?
The numbers were incorrect. It's also replacing the numbers in the subsections.
Oh.
We have this, it's only not.
Oh, yeah, we do have it, yep.
Yeah, we have that.
Okay, so yours is
Yeah,
not.
ours is.
But you're right.
So we're just looking to read the sections we read then.
Yeah. The biggest change is the screening.
So I'm gonna read this, proposed bylaw change. It's to see if the town will vote to amend the town of Dayton zoning bylaws by amending section 4650, excuse me, by deleting in its entirety and replacing with the following or take any other action relative thereto or as follows. 4650, 52, I'm sorry, 4650, 51, 52, and 53 stay the same. The change is 4654, which is screening, which I will read. The large-scale ground-mounted solar photovoltaic facility, including all accessory structures and appurtenances, shall be visually screened as to not be visible from abutting streets and properties. All necessary structures and appurtenances shall be architecturally compatible with each other, and the surrounding neighborhood structures shall be shielded from view and/or joined in clusters to avoid adverse visual impacts. The adequacy of such screening and shielding shall be determined by the special permit granting authority in the sole discretion. Methods such as the use of landscaping, natural features, berms, and fencing shall be utilized. The special permit granting authority may, at the applicant's expense, engage the services of a registered landscape architect in order to create a landscaping / screening plan for said facility when, which satisfies this bylaw is determined by the special permit granting authority in the sole discretion. Now, you're gonna see on the back of the paperwork itself, on the back of that page I just read, is that, the numbers change.
And they do, that's a,
And you're gonna see, I just read
sign it.
4654, and I'm gonna read the back of, the one I just read now, and this is B, tree planting shall be 6 feet in height at the time of the planting, and shall be minimum height of 8 feet within 5 years of planting. Shrubs shall be a minimum of 4 feet in height at the time of planting. The owner and/or operator shall be responsible for the replacement of all landscape plantings over the course of the operation of the facility. Should any plantings die or not meet the requirements of section 3.9.5A above, they shall be replaced by the owner and or operator of the facility. Landscaping, under C, landscaping shall be considered deer and disease-resistant species. Letter D, the applicant shall provide the special permit granting authority with a landscaping and maintenance bond, in parentheses, separate from the decommissioning bond, in an amount satisfactory to the special permit granting authority in order to secure compliance with section 4654. And as you go down, you'll see that, the next should be 4655, and then 4656, the numbers change, and then on the last page,
Numbers are messed up.
it'll be land clearing, which will be 4657, excuse me, land clearing. And that takes care of the changes to the bylaw.
The primary change, I think, on this, which is probably a lot of you are interested in, is our old bylaw said minimize the impact of the visibility. This bylaw clarifies it, which means you will not see it, not minimize the sight of it, so.
This board is the special permit granting authority in all matters.
Questions?
So, Francis Crisafulli, 1730 Wellington Street. I think the board is well aware, most of the board is well aware of the predicament I found myself in with the 21-acre solar farm that was approved by the planning board last April. The original plan had that solar farm, again, 21 acres, located 50 feet from my property line. So I do applaud the board for looking at, better ways to screening, but I do see some discrepancies. So I know some of the programs that we have going on here are talking about solar collectors that are in excess of 15 feet tall. So I think that there's some inadequacies associated with the level of planting. You can't say a six foot tree, growing at 6 inches or a foot a year is not gonna be adequate to screen that particular facility, power plant, if you will. So I think some of that should be looked at in additional screening.
Could I answer that, though?
Sure.
This is a basic standard for normal, construction, normal circumstances. Again, being a special permit, we have the authority to insist on higher plantings, higher fences. It's a condition we set, at the time, just to respond to that, so.
I mean, I think it would be better to say adequate height to screen, the solar collector, at time of installation. Waiting for a tree to grow,
Well, it's gonna
9
be
feet.
5 years.
It's gonna be a long time, right? So the other part that I do also want to recommend changing is associated with, your present, 4655, which is being changed to 4656. I think that, based on my situation where my backyard abutted this property and having a house that's 1,500 feet off the road, retreat lot style residence, I think the planning board should consider something at least 100 to 150 feet contiguous buffer around the property when it's bordering residential homes and properties. I mean, I fought very hard to get, which I felt was not enough, to 150 feet, where it was originally proposed at 50, because it's essentially my backyard against their backyard. What if it was something similar where it was my front yard against their backyard? That 50-foot buffer, would be deemed adequate by the bylaw.
I thought we changed the buffer on this one.
So my recommendation to the planning board
No, I think you're right, I agree with
would
you.
be a significantly larger, 150-foot minimum buffer on all areas of the property bordering residential areas. I'd also like to ask the planning board, who's enforcing these bylaws? I mean, you can see every, I know we have bylaws in place that say you can't see them from the road. Drive around.
Yeah, I know.
We have we're ripe for solar in this town. We're gonna hear some more about it tonight. I think we're fooling ourselves unless we get ahead of it. We're gonna find ourselves in the middle of solar fields, And, you know, that's not why I moved to Dayton to live in the middle of a power plant. Thanks for your
Okay, thanks.
listening.
Yes,
I agree with the gentleman, you know how much we fought.
yeah.
Sir, could you, please
Alan
identify yourself?
Bosley,
Thank
1680
you, sir.
Pine Street. You know how much we fought and how hard we tried to at least get a buffer. I mean, the only buffer we got was 50 feet. Well, that 50 feet is alongside my home, my bedroom, right, it's right there. I don't like the buffer of being 50 feet, it should be, like the gentleman said, 100, 150. All through the process, the solar company, 84 feet, we had a walkthrough, here's where it's gonna start, here's where it's gonna be, right? And until the permit was approved, we were under the impression it was gonna be at minimum 84, 85 feet. At the time of the approval of the permit, it was down to 51. So everything through the process with the solar company was inconsistent, unanswered, questions they couldn't answer. We've worked hard to try and do our due diligence and know what we were asking for and about, and many times left with just question marks.
Yeah, when we, afterwards, I mean, many of us were up there, I thought we were pretty much going in the right direction. So
We
you're
were.
saying, since the permit was issued, things have changed?
At the time of the walkthrough, we were, right? That's
Yeah.
what we had agreed to at the walkthrough, but apparently people speak with forked tongue, because that all changed. Each time he came in front of this board and the conservation board, the amount of footage for a buffer went down further and further and further, until now it got approved at 51 feet.
Well, if we have a plan that was approved back then,
I think we have a
for
plan.
the
of-
Yeah, you have a
Distance.
plan, they got their permit.
Well, I know they
No,
got
if
their
we have
permit,
one
but
that says
that's
this
not
is-
what we
this
agreed
is
upon.
what we
and that's-
approved, then we can make a move. We'll have to research it.
Well, you can research it if you like, but the solar company, if you look at their blueprints and their prints for their solar, because they extended the east side of the solar field, they extended the buffer on that side, and they eliminated some on the north side, my side, right? The panels that were gonna be put on the east side of the solar field are now being put on the north side, along with their construction road, which is on my side. Basically, we're the only ones that are really adversely affected by,
What, do
Most.
you understand what I'm saying now? We would have a plan that shows the footage
that's right.
from your property line over to where the solar field begins. And if we said 84 feet that we finally approved, then that's what it should be.
I think the final approval was 51. That's what our complaints were all along. We kept, I think the final approval was 51 feet. And if this is correct, it was a 50-foot
We'll have to
buffer.
get out the final plan.
Now, you're talking to the solar,
Huh?
Doesn't
I
sound
think, I think
No.
we actually agreed on a longer distance than that, I don't recall.
to the panel or to their construction road and buffer.
Well, the solar companies like to play that game too, where you say it's 150 foot to the panel. You know, for mine, it's 150 foot to the panel, but 130 feet to the fence. You know, that's counterintuitive to what we were
Well, nice.
discussing.
And also to the screening, there's three things to worry about. That's, the screening is one thing, the fence is another, and
We'll have to find a plan, Carrie,
but
that
the
we,
plan
the final
should
plan
show
we
all of
approved.
that.
No, you're not doing it now though, right?
No.
Because we can't do it under the public
Oh,
hearing.
no,
That's a separate-
no.
okay.
No,
Thank
I-
you.
Separate item.
I'm just looking at the bylaw and suggesting that maybe that buffer of 50 feet should be increased.
Honestly, I thought it
Agreeing
was
with
getting
this gentleman.
increased this time, wasn't it?
No?
You know how I feel, right?
Yes, sir, I do.
Thank you.
Okay.
I mean, I personally think 250 foot is an adequate buffer. You know, and again, I fought hard for that, unfortunately did not win. You know, and now I'm kinda stuck living in Dayton because I can't sell my house. But, you know, I'm asking the board to,
I think we ought to
Great
place
relief
this
for
on
other
hold,
folks.
this one, and further consideration.
When is the town meeting?
We don't have time, but you know, myself, I was under the impression we were extending the buffer. But, you know, that was between that and the screening,
But it's a negotiating point by us. If we put this on hold again, then that means we're gonna go into the fall town meeting. And we are the granting authority
Correct.
of special,
Yes.
special permits, so we can
We could always-
negotiate that with them.
We can always set those parameters when we set the special permit.
Would you all go on record for recommending at least a 150-foot buffer contiguous around the property?
I
against the
don't
residential
think we
zone?
can go on record doing that.
I would.
I-
I don't see anything wrong with 150 feet.
I am understanding this correctly, right? The side yard shall have a depth of at least 30 feet. However, where it butts a residential district, the side yard shall not be less than 50 feet, right?
Correct, side setbacks.
So 50 feet of buffer from a home.
Yeah, but while we were under discussions, we did, I thought, got yours increased.
Yeah.
No, that was through the walkthrough, but then I said,
Well, that's
eventually I
what I'm
started going
saying.
backwards.
We
They
got-
were a little tougher with you.
Yeah,
And
they
with
were
Frank.
miserable to me, not tough, they
Right.
were miserable.
They were, the solar company was really working with his situation because they were really backing up to his property. And they did give him some,
They did, they went from 50 feet to 150.
right, they went from 50 to 150,
Right.
which,
So,
you know, we
That's-
were
if we
trying
got
to
Not what I
get,
wanted, but I think that was
we were
reasonable.
trying to get 200, but,
It
you
was
know.
all about getting the amount of panels that they wanted into that solar field.
That's what
That's
it's
where the
all
bottom
about.
line
Yeah.
Correct,
was.
it's the biggest bang for the
Right,
buck.
they didn't care if they took them from one side and put them on my side, or my side to the other side. They just wanted that amount of panels, and that was it.
because they get that number they're working with.
Exactly, that's a
Not
set
my
number,
problem.
exactly.
Right.
And it's
Not my problem.
unfortunate that it happens like that, because when they come in and negotiate with, say, National Grid as the carrier here, and they're selling the energy to the grid, they come in and say, well, we're gonna come in with a 5 megawatt system, and they don't wanna stray from that, so they don't wanna go up, they don't wanna go down, but they sure as heck would like to go up, because they're gonna make more money, but they don't wanna go down, so, and to decrease the size of that system itself. They don't wanna do that.
but they have done it in the past.
Certain,
Well, we need-
yes,
And normally, and I mentioned this at the meetings, and that's why I'm here, because of the 50-foot buffer, I think it should be increased. It's not gonna do me any good, right? But for other residents of the town, it might help them down the road with the solar company, right? To get more of a buffer, because everything I've read on solar energy and solar companies, most of them have cooperated 100% with the residents, right? They wanna be good neighbors. I didn't feel this way. I didn't feel that way with this company. So I'm here basically to say, he's right. Extend that thing, 100 feet, 150 feet. Cut a few of your panels out. Might lose a couple of bucks, big deal.
I think it would be my understanding that at a town meeting that we could pass this bylaw in its entirety and then make amended changes on the floor, and I believe that the moderator may allow that.
He will.
That was not one of the original items for change that we posted for a public hearing.
Correct.
Correct. So, but we could always amend that on the floor at town meeting.
But it's not an amendable item, we didn't even bring it up as a.
It might be at risk with the Attorney General, so you might be able to get what you want now and go for further changes in the fall meeting.
I just think if we put this on hold again,
Oh, I know.
then we're back to square one, so it won't do anything. So I think we should put this in now,
We don't have time for a public hearing, do we?
No.
and then do it later on in the fall.
All we can do is try to,
If we need to.
since it's special permit, move the setbacks. We can't do anything with the setbacks now at this town meeting, because it hasn't been posted for a public hearing.
Correct.
Correct.
So we could do that in the fall, though, you're absolutely right.
Yep.
We can go forward with this and address the setbacks.
If no, but in either case, we have the granting authority to do that. So we can negotiate that with the solar companies. It's not any different than what we have done in the past.
We can take your recommendation, though, and say the planting shall be sufficient height, at the
Well-
estimated.
The bylaw says a minimum, so it's the starting point.
Right.
And then depending on ground contours, grades, and everything else,
Yeah.
the board can increase it.
Yeah, and I would just say, publicly, that the town needs to work on enforcing what we already have, Cause there's no enforcement. You can see every single site except for one in town, just driving by.
Well, none of them were really done right, Frank.
That's a shame. You know, and again, we have all these bylaws, that if we don't enforce it, that's, you know, that's crap.
Other towns try to accommodate their solar bylaws by saying, okay, it's gonna be a cleared lot. You can't clear 21 acres of land to put your solar field. You gotta find a spot that's open.
Every single solar company that has come before us always has a deadline, and they're in a hurry to get their project approved, and they're jamming, and they want it done quickly, and they don't give us sufficient amount of time to really look at the big picture.
Well,
And I've said that from yours and yours.
right, and it's largely, I would assume, right, because of all the benefits from the state and the tax
They
savings
say they
and
get
whatever it is.
incentives
That
and-
the incentives,
You
right,
know.
because we couldn't even get it postponed. My wife had argued to get it postponed, instead of having a vote that night, she argued to have it postponed to the next meeting. And now one request was denied, we got approved that night. So,
Right.
you know, we felt kinda slighted by that, because like, jeepers, we haven't asked the board for anything, just a couple of weeks. But they were under the time frame, like you said, Mr. Wood,
Every single one of them.
not my problem.
Right.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you as well.
Well, we can either amend this or try to enforce it in the process.
I would like to amend it to state 150-foot buffer zone.
You can't though, it's not
Okay, then we can't.
in that one, what about the plantings?
What about the planting? What do you want to do?
Well, there's been a recommendation that the plantings be as tall as the finished project. So you can't see it from
I
the
mean,
get-go.
it's kinda, when you read that bylaw, it's,
Well,
you
screening
can't have it
should
both.
be, if it's screening, we shouldn't see it, so it wouldn't matter.
I mean, when you read the main body, it says that it should be adequate to hide the project, but then in
Yeah, the
section
new
A-
language does it.
Right, in section A, you say 6-foot tree, the minimum of 8 foot in a year, or 2 years, whatever it is. But, you know, that's, again, a little vague in my opinion.
Yeah, I get you.
Yeah, so it should be 6 feet in height at the time of planting, and a minimum of 8 feet height in 5 years. If it's a 15-foot solar panel, as is actually being proposed here in Dayton, what do you do?
So one
Wait 15 years?
suggested change would be to change that first sentence. Tree planting shall be a minimum of 6 feet at the time of planting. So that can be raised too.
I mean, you're covering it in the main body of screening for 654, that says that obviously the board is gonna grant special authority to talk about landscaping, natural features, berms, fencing, you know, so on and so forth. But that contradicts putting in a 6-foot tree. So technically, if somebody applied, they would be meeting the bylaw, and, you know, possibly the town could be up for lawsuit if you deny them when they
But it
specify.
does say minimum.
I know. No, it does not say minimum. It says, tree planting shall be 6 feet in height at the time of planting. And it says that there should be a minimum of 8
this
feet
is
within
true.
5 years. So that's a little bit more than half of a 15-foot solar panel.
Right, I mean, shouldn't that language be dependent on the height of the panel being proposed?
No, it does, yes. The panel,
It's at the ground
surrounding
level instead of the
grades and
raised.
everything. So you wanna put, I
I think
think,
we should put insert minimum
in,
before 6 feet.
yeah.
No, you should
If-
insert
right.
that it should be adequate height at time of planting to hide the panels. Because if you're telling
You
me
can
a
do
tree's
that.
gonna grow 2 feet in 5 years, and you need to make up 7 feet to cover 15 feet, do the math.
Yeah, it's
You
gonna
can
take-
see it, and then
gonna take a
it
few
doesn't
years.
conform to the other bylaws that say that it can't be seen.
So this is not gonna go into this town meeting.
Yeah, it is. We can,
So you can actually make changes
we
to
can make
this?
changes
Yeah, we
here.
can make them on the floor.
Just on that, on the screening part, because
Okay.
that's what was advertised.
And I'm fine with the rest of the subsections. And again, I applaud you guys for taking the efforts to change this, and you know, not make us ripe for some of these solar companies to come in and ruin our peace and happiness in woods and trees and birds and,
All we need to say is, tree plantings shall be an adequate height at time of planting to visually screen the completed solar project.
Period.
write that?
End of sentence.
Somebody?
Yeah,
I just came up with it.
That was good.
yeah, no, that's,
At adequate height.
Shall be adequate height at time of
Visually-
planting to visually screen the completed solar project. Is that what you're basically saying, Frank?
yep.
For the most part, cover it?
I mean, you have the shrubs in there too, again, you know, I'm fine with this, you know, shrubs tend to be a little bit shorter. But I don't think we were, you know, the bylaws, we're not considering that folks are moving to technology which is elevating, you know, these things
Is that right?
But what
into two
happens
stories.
if a solar company comes in and they're willing to put a fence that's high enough to actually screen that? What does that do for the plantings?
I don't think fences go that high.
Well,
You can
actually,
put fences any height, I mean,
I believe there's a town bylaw that limits the maximum height
Height
of
of
a
the
fence
fence.
as well. I think it's 10 foot. But you wanna be living next to a 15-foot fence?
No.
Prison.
Right, yeah, no, they're even better.
Trees, plantings are better. All right. Anybody else on this? We'll try to move the distance in the buffer zones in the fall.
Well,
Yeah, we can't do it at this one.
yeah, I know.
And I was
Thank you.
told that that motion could be made on the floor at the annual town meeting, so I'll be there and I'll be making that motion
To what?
to change the buffer.
I'm not sure you can if we have, I don't think it's an appropriate motion.
We'll see.
You can try.
We'll see what the
It's
moderator
worth a shot,
says.
right? Because it was not one of our original proposals. I'm not sure you can do that.
We can propose that at the next special. We can put a warrant
Yeah, we
article
can change
together
it.
for
That
that.
would be in the fall.
And we should.
All right, so,
Can I just make a note that in section B where it says requirements of section 3.9.5A, we just need to strike 3.9.5. So it just says section A above.
well, section A, we're eliminating it for the most part.
Wait.
About the 4 feet, 6 feet, 8
Well,
feet,
the-
5 years.
The major parts, but what I'm saying is that in section B, it's referencing a section number that's not there. 3.9.5.
I think
That
B's
3 point-
okay. Is
No,
that the
what
one
I-
you're talking about?
No.
Yeah. Just like-
Time out.
Oh,
So
D.
in section B, where it says or not meet the requirements of
Oh,
section 3,
okay.
we need to strike 3.9.5 and just say A above.
Correct.
Because do you see what I'm saying now?
Yep.
Okay,
or put the proper section number in.
correct.
I would do that. So it'd be 4654,
A.
parentheses. Oh, A, yes.
All right. Anything else? All right. Let's have can we get a motion to, approve the bylaw proposal as amended at this evening's meeting?
I'll make that in the form of motion, Mr. Chairman.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion's made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Just a quick point, do we have the proper wording on that? Sarah, do you have that?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Thank you.
All opposed? Any abstentions? That carries as amended for town meeting. Is the next one easier?
Yes.
Retreat lot zoning bylaw.
Retreat lot is just a administrative correction. The original retreat lot had 2 of the same section numbers, 5092, 5092. I'm sorry, 5093 and then for procedure, and then 5093 for requirements. So all I'm doing here is just correcting that,
Correcting the numbers.
yeah.
Okay. Any questions on that, anybody?
Please.
Thank
I'm
you.
fine with that one.
Oh,
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you, Frank.
Again, I applaud you for correcting that.
Okay, number 4, site plan review, zoning bylaw.
So if you
New
recall-
section 5460, what is that?
If you recall, we had an applicant come before us for requesting a minor site plan review, and within the language, it was not to exceed a total gross floor area of 2,000 square feet, or will not generate the need for more than 10 parking spaces. So the board had asked that we go to town meeting and change it to and, so that you have to meet both requirements to keep it as a minor.
Oh, okay.
And if it doesn't, in order to have a minor site plan, this is what it's proposing, is to have a minor site plan, you have to have 2,000, you can't exceed 2,000 square feet, and you cannot generate more than 10 parking spaces.
So I'll make a motion that we, accept, site plan review zoning bylaw change at, on 5460 for town meeting.
Second.
Okay. Is there any questions on what we're doing here? Everybody understand that? Okay.
Can I have a motion to approve the retreat lot as well, please?
I'll make that in the form of
Okay,
motion,
you did.
Mr. Chairman.
I'll second that.
This is item 3 or 4 we're talking?
That would be
Item 3.
great.
Okay. The motion is made and seconded to accept and forward to town meeting, item number 3, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Okay, item number 4, site plan review, is there a motion?
That was
Yeah, it was already
We
done.
already did, that one's good.
Okay,
Yeah.
moving backwards.
So we're all set with that.
Okay.
All right.
I just ask that you declare that the public hearing on this is now closed, if everyone
We'll
is all
close
set.
all the public hearings. Is there a motion to close all the public hearings?
I make a motion to close the public hearing, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Okay, motion made to close public hearings. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The motion carries to close public hearings.
Just to be clear, that's only the public hearing for the zoning bylaw changes. Yes?
Yes,
Okay.
correct.
Okay, we're moving on to item number 4B. Public hearing continued. BWC Greenbrook LLC, care of Blue Wave Solar Site Plan, special permit, 903 Tremont Street.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, before this gentleman begins, I, along with Mr. Woods, attended a public hearing that was over at the Bristol County Agricultural High School, and I will say this on camera. Yes, I did ask for that meeting to be audio taped, and those were for my own personal purposes, so I can understand exactly what these gentlemen were trying to do in the future. And it's my understanding that under the Mass General laws, you can sit there with a cell phone and videotape and audio them at any time without their permission. In regards to audio taping, you must ask the individuals involved if I may audio tape your conversation. So that's the reason why I asked to audio tape that meeting. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, good evening.
My name is Drew Pearson, and I'm here representing BDC Greenbrook LLC, so affiliated with Blue Wave Solar. Thank you. So, to Mr. Ryan's point earlier, we had a productive community meeting a week ago at the agricultural high school to talk about changes to the site plan and changes to part of the screening regime, and to just openly discuss questions and concerns that were raised by neighbors to the proposed project. For those new here in attendance, we'll just recount, a couple points just about Blue Wave more broadly, and then, dive into, the history of how we got here. We'll review, the kind of content, that will be here, talk about tonight with respect to the site plan. some of the efforts that we've made to assess the visual screening strategy that's proposed for the project. We'll also talk about some of the materials that were presented at the community meeting, and then we'd just like to open it up to a broader discussion. So a little bit about Blue Wave. We're a solar developer that's been around for a better part of a decade here in Massachusetts, with a very strong track record of over 135 megawatts developed in Massachusetts, over 40 projects. We've executed power purchase agreements with many different cities and towns and and public entities, community colleges and private schools. We were selected by the Regional Planning Authority in Greater Boston to be a preferred solar developer for those towns. And over our tenure, we've created significant economic and social impact through hundreds of construction jobs, significant property tax revenue, personal property tax revenue, as well as electricity savings, not just for the entities that we serve, but the community solar customers that subscribe to our projects. We've developed 30 megawatts or so of community solar here in Massachusetts, spread over what is now 3,500 community solar customers. And we've kind of been in this part of the business since the beginning of the market in Massachusetts. We've invested a significant amount of blood, sweat, and we'll just call it tears or resources in really proving this model and building out the capabilities to serve community solar customers in a way that we think is mission driven and consumer focused. So to that end, we're a company that really strives to act out our values, and as a B corporation, that's a very tangible sort of statement that we've made, in an effort to maintain a commitment to transparency and integrity in everything that we do. So to move to the proposed project tonight, just a kind of high-level overview. This is an agricultural solar project. Yes, it is a 14 foot at the high end elevated solar canopy. Minimum of 8 feet at the low end of the panels. So elevated high enough so as to allow room for people and equipment to continue farming underneath the array. So in a very real sense, we're striving to protect farmland and to maintain the long-term agricultural use of the property. Also working with the landowner to diversify the agricultural uses through the different planting regimes, et cetera, through shade and partial sun and full sun areas created by the project, and then creating new opportunities for not just the current landowner, but for new local farmers, to still help maintain the land and propel the agricultural use of the property. We think that there's significant potential for educational opportunities in the agricultural and energy sector, and just new means to engage the community, being that this will continue to be an active farm. And like I said before, this is proposed to be a community solar project, so our mission is to provide solar access to renters, homeowners, small businesses, of all types. And on a general sense, each of our customers typically enjoy savings of around 8 to 10% or so on their electricity bill. And as we've done in other cities and towns, we have a plan to reach out to the local community here in Dayton to kind of help elevate the opportunity in the eyes of folks who might want to participate as community solar subscribers. So we'd be happy to talk more about that if there were any questions. And as far as project benefits, there's just the real estate and personal property tax payments to the town, and again, the use of local labor and contractors for the construction of the project, and as well as the long-term agricultural operation. Income for the landowner who is transitioning from a long and successful career in farming to retirement, and also new income for those who are new to the farm to subsidize their agricultural operations. And then lastly, eliminating a significant amount of carbon dioxide emissions. So the current status of the project, through some of our, iterations here on the site plan, we are just in and around 6,900 panels proposed for a 2.7 megawatt project. And to this point, we've gone through studies with the utility, and you are at a point where we are in a good position to build a successful project. We'd be open to talking with the town about any tax agreement arrangement that may be of interest. And as far as the kind of permitting history, our first meeting, technically here with the planning board was in the middle of April, although we've had various community meetings and informal presentations to the planning board starting at the beginning of April, to really get as much input into this project as possible. The fire chief has responded to our correspondence and designs, having signed off by email on the project. And the latest peer review letter that we received was actually as of today. And as we'll talk about in a little bit, we were able to meet with Mr. Williams as well as several abutters and a planning board member in the field to talk about the kind of visual nature of the project and how that squares up against the proposed screening plan that we'll be here to discuss tonight. So as far as the information requested, going through, we've talked a lot about screening trees, so the number of trees, the placement of the trees, the species of the trees. We've conducted multiple site visits with members of the board and the community to kind of help get as much input into that process as we can. We conducted an extensive analysis of property values of abutting residences to projects in Dayton and surrounding towns, including Berkeley, Rehoboth, and Dartmouth. We also provided supplemental information on just the nature of what agricultural solar is, and talking about the kind of long history of agrivoltaics with the University of Massachusetts as far back as 2011, and just to really kind of help provide information to kind of demystify what is understandably probably a set of questions regarding a type of solar that is fairly new but by no means unproven. And then lastly, we provided information regarding noise and electromagnetic fields, or EMF, as far back as our first meeting with the planning board in response to questions and concerns raised by abutters in our first community meeting on April 2nd. And so as far as design changes are concerned, we've added significant measures to mitigate visual impacts, including increasing the setback from Tremont Street and abutting properties, including a 3-foot earthen berm and 11-foot wooden fence, and then providing rows of screening evergreens, in this case juniper trees, in front of the berm and fence to soften that visual look starting on day one. And then lastly, we moved the equipment pad to the center of the site as far away from all abutting properties as possible. So to that end, Rich, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about just, again, to help kind of connect these points with the site plan, but we can talk about that and then proceed into the